let's do the OpenAI AI thing. If you guys have time, can we go over this real quick? I don't want to.
We can. I just wonder if the story's stale, but.
I mean, I think one of the things we can do here is just sort of, now that the 3 acts are complete, we can actually talk about the epilogue, just for people who don't listen to the news.
I think the epilogue's about to drop, but
yeah, well, that's what we'll get at.
I think we're still in the second act here. I don't think this is over by a long shot.
All right, so let me architect this.
Let's hear why. I'm curious why that is.
I'm going to architect and I'm going to hand it to you, Chamath. Act 1, Sam's fired. Act 2, chaos for a week. We were off. What were all the reasons? Act 3, obviously, just yesterday, Sam's back. I think Ilya's out. Microsoft's an observer on the board. So I guess the epilogue, Chamath, is what we want to know is what happened. Why did this all happen? Was there a major breakthrough? Was it Sam doing deals with Masayoshi-san or in the Middle East to make AI chips? If the epilogue does drop, or if, like you're saying, this is the second act and the third act's going to begin, whichever metaphor you want to use, what will it say, Chamath?
I think we can all agree on what happened, which is that the employees realized that in the absence of leadership, business leadership, that the enterprise value of that company was going to disintegrate. And what would have been imperiled was an $86 billion valuation secondary. So I think the employees did what was in their best interests, and it makes the obvious and logical sense, which is we need to circle the wagons and get the business leadership of this company back into this place so that the value of the enterprise is sustained. They did that. So I think this valuation is going to hold. I think the secondary is going to happen. So I think from that perspective, whatever was supposed to happen there happened. So what are the interesting threads that are left over? We don't yet have a full accounting of what precipitated all of the decision making at the board. Number one. Number two is the person who seemed to be the principal inventor is now no longer on the board, and I think based on Sam's blog post, could probably no longer be at the company. That seems like an important thing. And then the third thing, which I found odd, was Brett Taylor, who I work with at Facebook, who I've known for a long time, very sober, reasonable guy, puts out his own addendum to the blog post that basically says his chairmanship of this board is purely transitory.
What do you what is that? Yeah. What do you take from that?
My takeaway is whatever's happening is still TBD. There's enough question marks that, look, I told my friends on the board, without saying who it was, whatever you guys do, the most important thing that you need to do is you need to retain great counsel and make sure that and I said this publicly, make sure that there's phenomenal D&O insurance and make sure that there aren't any issues where you could be held personally liable for whatever happens in the future.
You're saying of the VAL, the corporate VAL. Yeah.
Now, that's a generic thing that I think all corporate directors should do. I think it's even more important here because you have a non-standard governance structure that could change. And it could change because the people involved want it to change, but it could change because the government says, hey, hold on a second, this should never have been like this in the first place. I'll give you an example of that. At Facebook, there was a moment where we divested all of our IP to a subsidiary in Ireland. And for tax reasons. And there were 2 signatories to that deal. It was me and Zuck. And 6 or 7 years later, this is long after I left Facebook, the IRS says, hold on a second, you misvalued these assets. We're owed X billions of dollars in taxes. It was a huge, long, drawn out thing. So at a minimum, if there's great value created here, there will be consequences with respect to tax and who paid what. And if you have the shielding of a nonprofit entity, there's theoretically a lot of taxes that could have been paid that not. So all of this to me says a lot of really open, curious threads, which means it's not the epilogue yet. We're probably somewhere at the end of Act 2.
Friedberg, my question to you is, there's been speculation that there was an superintelligence, AGI breakthrough possibly, and that's what spooked everybody. And maybe the claim that Sam wasn't forthcoming with the board was that he didn't tell him about it. The second thing was, there's been some 4chan posts, again, this is pure speculation, that maybe the AI they're working on could break in some way encryption, and that would have been caused a really chaotic global moment. What are your thoughts on those three potential items or more? Are any of those possibilities in your mind, Dave Friedberg?
No idea.
But I can take a shot at that.
Yeah, go ahead, Sax.
Go ahead, Sax, you take us out. Yeah.
So I think the best theory on what actually happened here, what precipitated all of this, was broken in a piece by Reuters. And what it said was that there was a letter to the board that was written in the few days before Sam's firing by the board, in which they were raising concerns over the development of QStar, which was a new breakthrough at OpenAI that allows these language models to do math. And previously, LLMs just weren't very good at math. It would sort of predict the next word, but that wasn't actually based on mathematical reasoning. QStar actually allows the AI to do math. It understands mathematical reasoning. Supposedly, the capability is only at a grade school level right now, but it is highly accurate and it can be scaled up with more computing power. And I don't think it was coincidental that Sam was supposedly in the Middle East seeking to raise billions of dollars to create a new chip company, basically a new specialized chip or ASIC, to perhaps run these types of models. So they were going to scale up this capability. And what mathematical reasoning allows you to do is unlock a whole new problem set. So for example, in chemistry, in physics, in computer science, in cryptography.
In encryption.
Yeah. All these things, mathematical reasoning underpins all of these disciplines. And so it does represent a major new piece towards AGI. And so I think the best theory about what happened is that the board, but I'd say specifically Ilya, had a panic or moment of panic or
concern,
freak out or whatever, concern, whatever, about this. And it combined with probably underlying concerns that the board had about Sam's other activity, because he's got his fingers in a lot of pies here.
So it hits two of the three potential reasons. Yeah. Putting aside any personal behavior, which seems like there was no personal behavior here. So it's those two, right?
Right. So they fire him, but they apparently didn't really think it through at all. And
because they're
really
news. It's not a professional board.
Yeah.
As constructed.
I don't know. I think Adam is very professional.
No, Adam is, but the other two were considered first-time board members.
But Ilya is a technologist, and then the two others who were, from nonprofits, they're just not very familiar. Yeah. And so what happened is they took this drastic action but didn't explain it. And with each passing day, it became more glaring that they would not explain it. So the pressure sort of built on the company to explain itself and provide a good justification for this. And then meanwhile, I think Sam just ran a textbook counter-coup operation here. I mean, they got
hearts, emojis.
There was that aspect of it, but disguised behind the velvet glove of all these hearts and saying I love you and all this stuff was the Iron Fist. The Iron Fist was they got over 700 of the 770 OpenAI employees to sign a petition that they were going with Sam. And Sam went to Microsoft and set up shop. So the threat to the board was, I'm going to take the whole company with me and set up shop over at Microsoft. And that was sort of the compelling threat. Basically, all the employees threatened to quit and go with Sam. And so the board was under immense pressure. And then at the same time, you got the sense that Ilya was under a lot of personal pressure from his friends, from people he knew at the company. It's not probably irrelevant that there's about to be a huge cash out. There's about to be a big secondary at a $86 billion valuation. So all these early employees were about to make a lot of money. In any event, for all of these reasons, I don't think Ilya is motivated by money. I think he's motivated by wanting to keep OpenAI intact. I think that he must have had a moment where he realized, wait a second, what we've done here in throwing out Sam is destroying the company. And then he recanted. He basically apologized and signed that petition. And at that moment, it just became a fait accompli that Sam was going to get his job back. And so that's basically what happened. Now, in terms of the epilogue, where I disagree slightly with Chamath is that although they still have to form this board, they're going to form a 9-person board and they only have 3 members so far. I think the conclusion here is, it's sort of a foregone conclusion, which is the board can never fire Sam again. I mean, they're not going to go through that again. Therefore, he has total control.
It would take a lot.
It would take a lot. So I think that Sam has won and he's going to consolidate his control over the company. By the way, I thought he already had control. I thought that
Yeah, you outlined that in
we
the
all
previous
thought
episode.
that he had control. Apparently, he did not.
Do you think he makes it?
I think he will
spins
have
it out
now.
and make it a for-profit? Do you think he just makes it a for-profit and then says, "Hey, we'll give X amount of the equity or whatever to this nonprofit, but we're just gonna flip this thing and separate it out and clean up the original sin"?
I think apparently there's like tax problems with doing that. But I think that what happens is, look, they already have this for-profit LLC entity, which is where all the investors have basically put their money into, and they've gotten shares or membership interests or some sort of profit interest.
Synthetic shares, whatever.
Synthetic shares, phantom shares. And then the vast majority of that is owned by this foundation, the nonprofit foundation, that I always thought was under Sam's control, but apparently it wasn't. I think it now will be. I just think that what's going to happen in the next few months is that Sam will consolidate his control because he's proven that he has the total loyalty of the troops and they're behind him and there's no choice. So why won't he get everything he wants?
Yeah, all of the smoke, I think, leads to the fire that you point out, which is there was some great advance. There was some deals going on, and those things, it matches what the board said. We didn't feel like he was being forthcoming with us, and it could be on two issues like that. It just totally makes sense. It locks the puzzle pieces in place. Dave, let's assume that they have now not only done language models, predicting the next word, and understanding that, but there is some reasoning going on here, and they understand math, and it understands how to do the next math problem. I don't know if we put that under reinforcement learning. It's obviously very different than language models. Explain what you think, if that is what's happening here with the Q project, what that could mean on a scientific basis.
I don't know enough. I'm sorry.
No This is why we love you, because you're honest when you don't know. Chamath, anything here as we wrap in terms of watching this whole brouhaha?
I think it's probably not the end.
Yeah.
More drama. I think there probably will be more drama.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of drama.
Did you see the article this morning where they started saying all the houses that Sam bought? He bought all these houses. And so I think there's a lot of investigators digging around now trying to figure out all the backstory because the board wasn't so forthcoming with what happened and why they made this decision. There's a lot of people digging around trying to figure out more about Sam than may have been, looked into in the past. So this will reveal all sorts of new threads that'll start to become part of the narrative. It's unfortunate. I think that the technology, the progress is what really matters here, not all the kind of personal people stuff. It's weird. I also, the other comment I'll make, I thought one of the biggest takeaways for me on the whole drama last week was that the employees basically got their way. The employees got together, voted, and said, this is what we want. And the board did what they wanted. And it really, I think, sets another precedent, much like I think Elon set a really big precedent in Silicon Valley when he came in and slashed heads at Twitter. The precedent that it triggered a lot of other executives to start to think, well, maybe that's possible, and I should think about doing, more cost savings and so on. This is another interesting precedent where an entire employee base gets together and says, we want X, and the board acquiesced and said, here you go, you can have X. Does that mean that other startups and other companies are going to start to see employee groups band together saying we want X in a more vocal, public way? Possibly.
Well, I mean, Friedberg, this is not a new tactic.
Right.
But look, if the employees are willing to sign a petition en masse and you get over 90% of them supporting something, and then you also threaten to all set up shop somewhere else, I mean, boards usually respond to that pressure.
Yeah.
But look, I think that it's very clear that Sam has the support of the troops. I'm not questioning that. But I think it would be a mistake to just see this as some sort of spontaneous groundswell. I think there was clearly like some organization to it. Like I said, I think he ran a textbook operation there.
Yeah.
And wasn't it Paul Graham who said something like if Sam were dropped on an island of cannibals, like kind of a Lord of the Flies situation, he'd be the one to come out on top? He's like he's in his element. Don't just assume, look, this is all covered up by hearts and I love you. I mean, I've never read a corporate announcement with the word love in it more times. This was not about love and hearts. There's some
he's a wartime
ruthless corporate
CEO.
Infighting here.
Yeah.
And he came out on top. But look, the board was totally incompetent. I mean, listen, if a board is going to take a drastic action of firing the founder CEO when everything is going great, I mean, because everything's been going great at OpenAI, it's incumbent on them to explain their actions, and there needs to be
Why didn't they just do that? Why didn't they do that?
There needs to be a
Why didn't they do that? Even as a CYA or for their reputation?
I'm saying it was totally incompetent.
Yeah. They should have dropped it. Yeah.
Well, no, what I'm saying is either there's a smoking gun or there's not. I don't think you should take an action like this ever unless there's a smoking gun. And if there is a smoking gun, you need to communicate that.
Right.
And I think with each passing day that they didn't communicate it, people came to the conclusion there is no smoking gun. And so my guess is there is no smoking gun, and they were overly hasty about taking this action.
Yeah, this could have been a very simple discussion. Hey, Sam, can we work on you telling us in advance when you're going and doing deal making so we can be in alignment on it? Like, there seemed like there was something that could have been done that wasn't firing him in this explosive way.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could put somebody on a PIP. You could do all kinds of things. So taking the step of, letting somebody go in that way with that orchestration. Again, I just think that this stuff is too juicy and too interesting for the details to not come out.
Oh, it will come out. Yeah. The fact that it hasn't come out yet is crazy. I would have suspected it would have come out in the first 72 hours.
So you think there is maybe not a smoking gun, but there's something?
No. I think it's what we said, which is that the economically rational decision for all the employees and for Sam and Greg was to do what they did because it allows them to get an $86 billion valuation and a big secondary done, right? So that makes complete rational sense. That is the rational decision that should have happened. And so that did. But it doesn't stop whatever underlying chaos was happening that caused this decision to exist in the first place to not come out. I just think that the incentives for that decision to come out now, for example, from the 2 departing board members is quite high. How do you get this information from the incoming board members? How do they not say anything? All the new 6 people that join the board will have to get read into this thing, right? So you're just multiplying the number of people that knows whatever it is. And it's either going to be, David, to your point, path A, which is the board didn't know what they're doing and they acted hastily, or, the self-preservation of here's what we knew. But it is just going to come out and leak after leak after leak. And then, to your point, the pulling the sweater of all of the other deals that may have been happening on the side or whatever, all of this stuff now comes out because it's just too salacious for too many people. The numbers are too big. Everything just looks too juicy. Now you have this like hidden technology that could theoretically ruin the world. Everybody will be leaking to everybody. And that's the only guarantee here, which is why I really think that you have to commend the leadership team for trying to become very militaristic about all of this. Everybody had the same tweets. They said the same things. They used the same heart emojis. I mean, it was extremely well managed.
It was mantras.
It's amazing what a secondary will do to the troops.
And to be honest,
there's alignment of the stock price.
What was the mantra? The mantra was that OpenAI is nothing without its employees, or something like that.
Its team.
Right?
We are nothing without our team, or something.
And
like
that was basically something that on the surface appeared to be a positive affirmation of camaraderie, but like I said, iron fist beneath the velvet glove. It's a threat. It's a threat. We can set up shop.
It's
at
also
Microsoft.
The formula in an Excel spreadsheet that says they are nothing without the team. The enterprise value equals 0.
This company is a 0 without us, and we can go set up shop somewhere else. So it was perfect velvet glove, iron fist type stuff.
Yeah. Well done, Sam. Sam will be on the pod in the coming weeks, I think. I've been texting with him. So I think if Sam...
I think what Elon said yesterday was also really interesting, which is he described Ilya as an extremely moral person who thinks about these things subtly. And so, again, and I've known Adam for a long time. I think Adam is tremendous. He is...
From Quora, Adam D'Angelo.
Yeah, he was the CTO at Facebook. We worked together in the trenches in war for years. He is just the best of the best.
Totally. He's very smart,
he's so
very
incredible.
Very knowledgeable.
This is not an irrational, emotional person.
My guess is that they had good reasons to want to act based on Ilya's philosophy around AI safety. You may not agree with that philosophy, but their mistake was, if you're going to do something like that, you have to be able to defend it. You have to be able to communicate it. And I mean, if your concern here was around AI safety, write a manifesto. Explain the values that you're invoking and supporting.
That's right. I think that's the takeaway for all of us, for all of us on boards that at some point have to make these decisions because we're all faced with them and we've made them. The lesson that I learned is we're at a point where it is so important that you give employees the transparency to re-underwrite why they should stay. So when you make a decision like this in any company going forward, my reaction will be open the kimono and lay out the case bare. So if you have to make a CEO transition, this is exactly why we did it. This was the precipitating events that caused it. Here's the evidence, and here's what we're going to do about it. And I think that that's probably a good takeaway for all boards to learn, which is that level of transparency is going to be needed in the future so that folks don't fill in the blanks with their own conspiracy theories.
Also, there were apparently two companies or two organizations running in parallel here to build on your points, Chamath, which is Ilya and the nonprofit. This might have been the right decision for that organization. But the right decision for the employees who are incented by this secondary that was about to be shipping the employees apparently billions of dollars, that for-profit company, this would be the wrong decision. The for-profit company should go fast and it should be releasing
this is where
products.
Jason, like I from what was reported, there's like this obligation, and it's hard to understand what it means, of the board to determine when AGI is reached and then as a result, essentially hit the kill switch on the commercial business. And if I were a board member dealing with that, I would want a gazillion trillion dollars of insurance to cover me. And the reason is that when that's litigated, not if, when that's litigated, it is that board that will be at the center of dealing with that financial responsibility and liability. This is the other masterstroke, I think, of what Sam did. He's not even on the board, so that liability is no longer his.
Yeah.
So he's got complete control of the business and the actual
none of the responsibility.
And the actual fiscal responsibility he doesn't have to bear.
Well, can I speak to the kill switch for a second? So I think it's a really interesting point. So by the way, Jason, there is a for-profit entity here. The for-profit entity is this new LLC that was created.
Correct.
The nonprofit entity is above it at the governance layer, and it kind of owns the LLC.
Right.
So again, investors and employees get compensated out of the LLC, and then this nonprofit foundation was supposed to exercise. It's a really complicated org chart. There you go.
Yeah. Whenever an org chart has more than like 2 arrows,
it's crazy.
You're fucked.
Right.
How many arrows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 arrows. That's six too many.
But my point is that this complexity was justified by this idea of the kill switch, that if the AI gets out of control, the AGI gets out of control, we're going to have this board of super wise people who are not motivated by a profit incentive, right? Because that we can't trust the profit motive, right? And so we're going to have this board of wise elders who are going to make this, super intelligent decision. And if this whole episode shows anything, it shows this structure completely failed. I mean, the board ended up acting in a completely incompetent way. Either they had good cause to do what they did and didn't explain it, which was incompetent, or they had no cause at all, which was incompetent. Either way, you cannot say that this board acted with a high degree of competence, no matter how competent any of the individuals are. I'm just saying that as a board dynamic, it completely failed. So they did not invent some higher form of governance as they originally claimed was
It's a Franken
necessary.
structure. It's a Franken structure.
So it didn't work. And I think it's I think important lesson in human motivations, which is just because you take out the profit motive does not mean that human beings all of a sudden become noble. They just pursue other agendas, basically political agendas or whatever. And so this idea that we're going to solve the AGI problem or alignment issue by creating nonprofit structures, I think that this episode proves that's not going to work. Absolutely. Look elsewhere.
And you and I talked about this on Twitter Spaces and X Spaces, which was, people give VCs and investors a hard time about, their existence and how they operate in the world. Okay, fair enough. I'm sure there's valid criticisms. But the share price and employees participating and the share price going up and secondaries occurring on a regular basis is the most perfect structure that has been created by humans to date for running an organization. I think we would all agree. And it's super imperfect and there's weird things that happen. But if you want everybody to grow in the right direction, giving them some shares and then everybody watching the share price go up and to the right is pretty phenomenal. This board did not have one VC on it. It was not.
And all the VCs in the company were the biggest. They were the most aggressive tweeters saying, WTF, like, what are you doing? Because they could see their investment going up in smoke.
Yes, they had alignment with the share price, but no controls.
So as much as you don't like the profit motive, it does create alignment, and that makes people predictable, and that's a good thing. And like Adam Smith said in the 1700s, the reason we can trust that the butcher and the baker will serve us our dinner is because they're going to make a profit. They're aligned with us. And, we don't look to charity. We look to their self-interest. And like you said, for all the shit that VCs take, if you properly align people, it can create, I think, it creates a great enterprise. It creates a potential for a great enterprise, for great outcomes.